Chapter 147. Friend. 3. The class president's smile was perfect. The corners of his mouth curved just the right amount. His lips creased graciously, and the tips of his eyes smoothly slid down. I wasn't exaggerating. Then, his mouth retracted and his eyes darted up, returning to the class president's usual expressionless face, and I felt like I was going nuts. The class president stepped up onto the stage. As I stood horrified, the class president grabbed the microphone. Students of Shinseo High School. His voice pierced the uproar of the auditorium. The video you are watching now shows Hwang Yunseo from grade 2, class 5 assaulting his classmate, Kim Yul, in a group. This has not been staged. It is the scene of a real assault. The class president was not holding any paper to read off of. He was delivering a speech that I had never heard, that he had never practiced in rehearsal. I was able to obtain material like this thanks to an anonymous informant. Yes. There was more than one. The crimes committed by Hwang Yunseo of grade 2, class 5 have been recorded in 103 tapes, 311 videos, and 30,790 photos. Crimes? Videos? Photos? Broadcasting Club President. Turn over to the PowerPoint presentation. Why yes. The projector illuminated light onto the auditorium wall. Rows of pictures were displayed. The images weren't that sharp, but our school uniforms were recognizable to everyone. We plan to report Hwang Yunseo of grade 2, class 5 officially after this presentation ends today. Of course, the victim, Kim Yul of grade 2, class 5, will press charges against Hwang Yunseo. Report? Charges? I want to ask. Did anyone among the teachers of Shinseo High School know of this violence? I see there is none. Yes, of course. Aside from the regular criminal activities that took place for the past year, the teachers who are supposed to be responsible for our school lives took no action at all. This is the reality of Shinseo High School. The reactions of the teachers weren't much different from my own. All of them looked shell-shocked. A few of them frantically whispered to their colleagues, and the division head rose from his seat. Wait a moment. Wait. You. Come down. What do you think you're? I trust that all of our teachers will help with the police report. I am informing everyone of the violence at our school. No, if you do it like this. Everyone, please be aware that my presentation is currently being recorded and taped. The evidence has already been sent to media outlets this morning. The head of the grade stopped standing and looked at the principal. All of the staff stared at the principal. The principal opened and closed his mouth stupidly while looking at his phone, saying, "Jay, just a moment. Please wait just a moment." Maybe he called someone, or maybe someone called him, but he was kowtowing to someone with his head down. The school staff seemed paralyzed by his behavior. It's a lie. I yelled into the microphone I gripped in my hands. All the pictures are fabricated. They're fake. But the speakers did not relay my voice. Belatedly, I realized that the broadcasting club president must have disconnected my microphone. Please look at Hwang Yunseo as he stands here. Only the class president's voice boomed loudly in the auditorium. Do you recall what Hwang Yunseo said in his apology just now? He said, "When I saw my classmate being bullied, I didn't do anything to stop it. Instead, I joined the other kids in bullying him." Do you remember? The students bristled. He excused himself by saying he only joined in. That is, he claimed that he was not the main culprit. Though he himself organized, filmed, and shared the videos of the violence, Hwang Yunseo did not admit his fault up to the end. Then he pretended to have truly repented and put on a show for you. Every student in the room was staring at me. Please look at Huang Yunxiu's face. Remember his expression. That was right. The class president was a bastard. Remember Huang Yunxiu's logic. Remember his methods. The way he led the violence, the way he tried to scurry away, observe every bit of it. This bastard was the one hunting me behind the scenes. The class president lowered his microphone. With his right hand still wrapped around the device, he turned to me. Then, he spoke in a voice only I could hear. This was tough. His voice was so calm that I felt like I was slipping from reality. Anyway, Huang Yunxiu, your life is over. You'll probably be surprised to hear how many kinds of crimes you committed. Even so, you probably won't spend your whole life in jail since you're a minor, but oh, well. It's fine. We can just end your social life. Why you? It was hard for me to act like your friend, too. The class president sighed. Really? I'm too emotional as a youth. Just talking to you made me nauseous. It's nice that my back doesn't hurt, but I viewed the world too simply. Well, that's how I ended up in college, the class president complained. Did you know? It costs a lot of money to improve society. Every little thing you do requires money. It costs money to plant a tree. It costs money to travel to a disaster zone. Taking care of teachers costs money, too.
Huh?
If I knew this during my school days, I would have. Fucking bastard. What the hell are you saying? Furious, I yelled. A beat after, I realized that my voice was too loud and that it had spread through the auditorium. I paused. Unlike the class president's quiet murmurs, my outcry was uproarious.
Yeah.
The class president smiled. I was muttering nonsense precisely to make you yell like that. Brat. You fell for it hook, line, and sinker. When I saw the guy smile, my head went blank again. You're probably thinking of reaching out to your connections. Pfft. The class president covered his mouth with his left hand and laughed. Sorry. It's just funny. This son of a bitch. Anyway, you probably believe that your connections will help you. They won't. Your ex-girlfriend? We negotiated to erase the videos that she was present in. All of your clients struck a deal. Remember this. The children of well-to-do houses actually have no interest in you. They only care about avoiding association with the incident. In this chaos, the broadcasting club president had continued to go through the PowerPoint slides. The pictures connected. The student body's rumblings turned into a commotion, and throughout the auditorium, responses like "fuck" and "is he crazy" popped up. Though I feel sorry for Kim Yul-SSI. This is as far as your report goes. It can't be helped. Haven't I always told you since you were young, Gongja? The class president wore a polite, friendly smile on his lips. A person must do what he can. That smile made my mind snap. You meet someone one day that makes you think, the world would be dirted if you left this person be. These sorts of people exist, and instead of regretting it later, you must get rid of them quickly. You have to wreck them when you can so that you don't have regrets. Roaring, I lunged at the class president. He didn't resist. Instead, he smirked lightly. Well, I suppose this is why people say you need to raise your kid right so you're comfortable in your old. I swung my fist. I knocked him over and crushed him. There were screams behind me, but I did not stop. Bastard. Motherfucker. Because of you. How dare you, you bitch. My life. Hey, Huang Yunxiu. Calm down. Teacher. We have to stop him. Broadcasting club president. Stop. Can't you stop recording this now? Even if you yell at me. I have to do this, so. My life. The clear requirements have been achieved. Considering the uniqueness of this stage, requesting judgment. I lived doing the best I could. Even if I didn't lead the best life, I really did my best. Who here worked harder than me? Was there a student who lived more earnestly than me? Judgment complete. The Lord of Mansing accepts the clearing. No. However, the tale of the ascending city, side story, will not be included in the true history. There wasn't. Stage cleared. I couldn't accept this. I couldn't. This was unfair. I was cheated. This was unreasonable. It wasn't right.
Yeah.
This was wrong. It was human rights abuse. My human rights. All people have a right to a fair trial. I'm a person, too. This was wrong. Today, the 29th floor stage has been cleared. I was wronged. Sympathize with me. Come on. Have pity. The Lord of Mansing announces instead of the tower. Good work, everyone. Did nothing wrong. Though I am on everyone's side, with this much, others would also turn a blind eye. I am a little more generous to those who struggle. Nothing at all. May luck be with you all. That was my first defeat. I took in a rushed breath, and with a grunt, I raised my body upright instinctively. My heart was throbbing. It wasn't the first time I had become completely immersed in a character, but the ache in my heart as I returned to my senses was hard to get used to. When I looked around, I saw we were in a corner of the great library. Yuck. The Constellation Killer and the director also rose up one by one. For a while, the three of us caught our breaths. We had no energy to do anything else. Our brains had been jumbled. Over 10 minutes later, the director quietly mumbled, "Gongja." Yes? Come over here. The director weakly beckoned with a finger. Somehow, it felt ominous. The fierce light in the director's eyes was the same as it was when the kids in the orphanage got into a fight. I obediently went to the director and sat on my knees. I'm here. A long time ago, in the spring and autumn period, there lived a man called Wu Zishu. I felt more and more on edge. When the director scolded us as kids, he never told us off right away. He drew it out. When we asked him a question, he made us wait for a day to think. When he got angry, he unhurriedly told us a story. From what I remember, the tale of Wu Zishu was an S-class alarm. Yes. I've told you this many times, so I know you remember this. He was someone who dug up the corpse of the man who killed his family and whipped it until the bones turned to dust. But think about it. Yes. Wu Zishu wanted to dig up the grave for his revenge, but what's this? Someone already bore into the ground to make it easier to exhume the corpse. They even pulled out the coffin. Then, do you think Wu Zishu would be thankful or happy that someone dug up the grave? Or do you think he would be mad that someone touched the grave of someone he lay claim to? Half of the revenge has been stolen by someone else. Isn't that right? 1. Confused, I stuttered, teacher. Yes. Speak. You're not mad that I went overboard? Or that I chose a method that was too self-sacrificing? Are you not scolding me for not taking care of my body? Gongja. You're an adult now. You have to take care of yourself. Why should I meddle? Raising you was hard enough. Do I still have to worry about you? The director spoke dryly. Amazing. The director who said such a thing so frankly was amazing, and my memory, which forgot for a moment that he was that sort of person, was amazing. I raised you kids to be as strong as possible. Sympathy can feel like a nice gift, but if a person receives nothing but sympathy, they will lose strength and wither. Gongja. I don't pity your life at all. Live as you want. Sure enough. Bei Hurayong muttered next to me. He was nodding like he understood something. I was wondering where Zombie's temper came from. He's learned it properly since he was young. Suddenly, I wondered how the kids who grew up in the orphanage with me were doing. Hanbija was a member of the National Assembly now, right? Are there videos of him on the internet? Gongja. Why yes. Even if you did not hand me the recordings and videos, I would have worked hard to kick Huang Yunxiu's. Sorry. No, I don't need to be sorry. Right. I would have worked hard to kick Huang Yunxiu's ass. Why did you dig up the grave by yourself? Do you want to be scolded? No. I can't get scolded at this age. Let alone in front of Bei Hurayong and Shiny. No, but I also had to do something. I entered the stage 1 year before you, director. In addition, my immersion was at 95%. Don't you think a person would be rushed and hasty in that position? He paused. The director hesitated when he heard 1 year and 95%. Who? As expected of the director. Even I knew now that he was considerate toward others, though he pretended not to be. I had become an adult. That's right. Director. You told us that we should live as we wanted. When I fell into the stage, I was doing as I wanted. I was following your teachings. Sure enough. Bei Hurayong muttered. Again, his face looked like he had understood something. I was wondering where the brat's tongue came from. He's been training his fucking shamelessness since he was young. At that moment. The constellation killer stood up. Like someone who had cried during a nightmare, traces of water remained by his eyes. Death King. As you wished, I have come to understand, Kim Yul. I felt him. I will remember him. I learned many things, but there is one thing I want to ask you. Without wiping his eyes, the constellation killer looked straight at me. What do you want me to do from now? I opened my mouth. Kim Yul is the victim. He was killed. As he died, he left his final words. Plus. The one that murdered me was you. Don't forget. You killed me. Plus. His grudge, assembled in 3 texts. As he threw away his life, he passed on a scream so that the culprits, those beasts, would not forget what they had done. To be haunted by the memories. Forever. But. I took out a handkerchief from my pocket and gripped it tightly. You forgot. The constellation killer tilted his head. What are you referring to? The lives that were sacrificed when you killed the constellations. The people of many worlds. I forgot. On the 50th floor, where I had taken a shortcut to get, the constellation had said this. I have amnesia, stranger. That he couldn't remember what he had done. My mistakes come down to 2 things. First, I did not think of the possibility that new constellations would be born if a constellation disappeared in a world. Second, I neglected the fact that a dead constellation could cast a curse on the world. I will not make the same mistakes in the future. Tell me what you want as an expression of my gratitude for this advice. I clenched the handkerchief again. It was something done without knowledge nor intent. It's over if you forget it and live on without remembering. But did Kim Yul think those beasts deserved to forget him? The ones who tore apart Kim Yul were the worst types of bastards, constellation killer. But that doesn't change the sin you've committed. What I wanted was, don't use the same excuse those animals did. For you to change. To return from being a puppet. If it was possible to become human, to become human. Look at those who have wronged you. Then, look at those you have wronged. Please face it squarely. Please make a decision here. If you hate it, I will not use 100 Ghosts reincarnation to call you again. And one day, for certain, I will find and destroy all of your dolls. But if... The constellation killer looked at me. The blue surface of his pupils was shaking. If I face it squarely, what will happen? Whether it was a trace of the person who had attended Shinseo High School, was a part of grade 2, class 5, or if it was the constellation killer himself who felt these emotions, I didn't know. Because I didn't know, I asked. What would Kim Yul do? Then. What do you want to do? The constellation killer opened his mouth. Chapter 148. Prologue. 1. The Great Library of All Things. The shadows of the bookshelves overlapped, creating a complex net. I don't know. The constellation killer's voice wandered inside that net. It's difficult. I can't fathom it. Did I kill so many? You say that such a great number of people lost their lives because of me. It's impossible to take responsibility for killing one person, but for the people of countless worlds. The constellation killer pulled out a diary with fumbling hands. Maybe it was a trace of Kim Yul that was left. The constellation killer kept a diary even as he lost his memory. The guardian goddess, old man hidden in the deep, follower of the blind eye. They were the constellations he had killed. The constellation killer quietly recited the names crossed out in red ink. The large snake born inside 7 sounds, the stork that serenades the cosmos, the witch who dies at morning frost, the lion that dreams of endless destruction, poison corpse flower, the moon that swallows the month's end, the yellow dragon of Dynasty Lake. The names continued. There was no sign of an end. After calling hundreds of names one by one, the constellation killed slowly looked at my face. I don't know. I have no way to know. But when I entered Kim Yul's body, I felt his frustration with the world, and when I spat out curses, I felt the same as Kim Yul. I resonated with him. Kim Yul wanted revenge on those who had wronged him. The constellation killer was silent for a moment. Is that it? He muttered. I, too, must receive the revenge of the worlds. Snap. The constellation killer closed the diary. The end of my life would not be enough recompense. Eternal agony. Those worlds would only wish for my eternal suffering. But mere suffering has no significance. What kind of suffering must I endure to apologize to those who have already died? I nodded my head. Librarian. Like he was waiting for me to call, the corner librarian stuck his head out from behind a bookshelf. His cheeks were flushed red. Welcome back. Unlike the previous apocalypses, I, and everyone else, was unable to view the story directly. I've just hurriedly read the newly registered side story of The Tale of the Ascending City. Indeed, it's... That's enough. Get over here. Death King, you become harsher with me by the day. The librarian feebly flew over. There. I've come. What would you like me to do? If you wish, I can. Please hand over the Epic of Lafanta Ejim. I know what I was saying, but did you know? The books I possess are all my holy relics. Of the numerous beings in the world, only I can create them. It's difficult if you tell me to hand over such precious books like they're pieces of fruit. But, of course, I will give it to you. The librarian handed me the book. Constellation Killer. Yes. Your story is written inside this book. How you fell into a new world, how you met the guardian goddess, and even how you became ClassRevivalHunter and the Constellation Killer. Your whole life is recorded here. You may have lost your memories, but they aren't lost forever. You can get them back again. The library became silent. The Constellation Killer wordlessly looked at the Epic of ClassRevivalHunter. The librarian exhaled softly and stared at the two of us. He had understood right away what I meant. The Constellation Killer had not. When you say, again. Yes. Like we had glimpsed into Kim Yul's past. From the beginning? From the beginning. You are saying I should look through my life, my centuries of living, from the beginning again. What you've done, what you've thought, what worlds you trod upon, and how the denizens of those worlds lived. Remembering is the first step to everything. Don't forget. Kim Yul staked his life on those words. You have to put down your life as well. Stillness. I understand. Stillness. I judge that your words are right. And silence. The Constellation Killer accepted the Epic of ClassRevivalHunter from me. To receive it, the Constellation Killer had to put away his diary again. Instead of the diary stitching together his disparate days, he held the record of his life from beginning to end in his hands. Indeed, said the Constellation Killer, holding the book. Simply repeating your life makes the world hellish. Does each person shoulder a type of hell? The Constellation Killer turned his head to where the director was sitting. Class president. The director didn't respond immediately when he was called class president. He couldn't have. His silence contained a gap spanning decades. Yes, Kim Yul SSI. The Constellation Killer, too, didn't respond immediately when he was called Kim Yul. He couldn't have. His silence contained a gap spanning centuries. The decades that one person endured and the centuries that one person threw away settled in the quiet air of the library. Kim Yul thought that he wanted to forgive you, and I agree with him, said the Constellation Killer. I want you to accept the forgiveness. The director closed his lips. The director shut his eyes. But was that an accurate statement? Most likely not. The director was not in control of his body. Rather than closing his lips were closed, and rather than shutting his eyes were shut. A pained sound, almost like a gasp, broke through the director's lips. Thank you. The director could say that. I'm sorry. That was likely what the director wanted to say. But the director held back his words. What he couldn't hold back escaped as a groan. The groan wasn't made of words but broken fragments. But somehow, I could understand the picture the fragments wanted to paint. If a little more. If I lived a little better. If I had a little more power. If I was a little smarter when I was young. That moment, I realized something. A tremor caused my body to jolt like a thunderbolt. The director's tightly closed mouth, shut eyes, the backs of his hands that gripped the floor. His aged skin. The trembling of his arms. Seeing his whole bent form, I realized something. The director was screaming. What I have to prove? In this world, there were people who were screaming. What I want to prove? Beasts mixed with humans in this world, and among them were people screaming alone, like islands, and somehow, the scream entered my ears and the sight entered my eyes. I just wanted to be proof of the screams. There is a person here. My infernal heavens. A person is living here. Anyone who learned the infernal heavens demonic art, any cultist who preached the doctrine of shadows, for certain, without question, must have felt the emotions I felt now. That was anger. Sadness. Seeing the hungry, the thirsty, the 9 sections of life and 9 types of death, they must have felt that, this cannot go unproven, that someone had to bear witness. I wanted to prove it. I wanted to let everyone know. I wanted to infix that someone was there, had existed, and bore a scar that nothing in the world could erase. Don't forget. I wanted to express the director's form in my infernal heavens. That wasn't all. The dance of the children inside a burning mansion as they smiled at me. Preda's voice crying to the skies as she held the bodies of a mother and babe in the middle of a town. The figure of my master as she brandished her sword in the snowy field she was named after. Raviel. Raviel. I can't let myself forget. The first form of the infernal heavens demonic art carried starvation within. Now, I must embed my infernal heavens. First, the children's dance. Second, Preda's scream. Third, Master's blade. Fourth, Raviel's sacrifice. Fifth, the director's silence. I want to carry them. But could I do it? Me? It was hard enough to carry starvation. Could I carry a person's, no, many people's lives? Even if I have to devote my life to it. I was determined. Meaning arose in my life. Let's prove that a person lived here. Let's prove that a person died here. I will be the proof of how they lived and how they died. I will capture the cries of beasts and the screams of people. If they smiled, I will capture the vibrations of their smile, too. However, not yet. I wasn't done here yet. Many things. My level wasn't suitable for recharting the forms of the infernal heavens demonic art from the start. This was an endeavor that required tremendous effort for a chance to accomplish. That's right. Let's not rush. For now, I should do what I can. I turned my head. Like that, I looked at our voyeur. Librarian. No, Hamustra. The librarian's shoulder trembled. The librarian, who had been watching the constellation killer and the director while panting heavily, twitched. Am my real name? For shame. Please call me by my title. Please make it so that the constellation killer can read the Epic of Lafanta whenever he wants. It doesn't need to be about conquering a stage. Just allow him to view the world as you do. Ahem. The librarian wheezed and fell into deep thought. To do that, I must share my authority. I would have to make him an apostle. Some constellations do mass-produce their apostles without scruples, but having apostles is a little awkward. Should I say, it isn't my style. There was no way that he, whose epithet was corner librarian, could make a subordinate or friend. He only ordered around weird servants like the bookmark maids. You don't want to? It's not that I don't want to. He may have been formed by the 100 Ghosts reincarnation, but the other constellation killer is just a doll made with the puppeteer's parade skill. Is there a difference? Ahem. There isn't a difference, but please make a choice. When you say choice. Until now, you've loved the story of the constellation killer. But, to use your manner of speaking, the constellation killer's path is now at a turning point. 2 routes have emerged. A turning point. Yes. I met the librarian's eyes. Route 1. In this route, the constellation killer has never met me. He has no memory of having met me. He leaves to hunt constellations whenever he has a week's worth of memories stacked up. The puppet route. It was the route where the constellation killer followed the puppeteer's parade, forever. Route 2. Then, there was this place where the constellation killer and I met. The constellation killer now knows Kim Yul. He remembers, and he will retrace the life of La Fanta Ejim starting from Kim Yul's days. It would be difficult. He will possess his body within the book and tread the same path he had walked for hundreds of years. It would be painful. In that route, both I and the director will be present. He doesn't have to absorb his whole life at once. Slowly. Just what he can digest, one bite at a time. Resting on the way is also acceptable. But that was the constellation killer's life. And one day, it would become Kim Yul's life. Choose the constellation killer's path that you desire. The librarian looked at the constellation killer. The constellation's silence did not last long. Constellation killer. And Death King's fosterer. Beaming, the librarian opened his arms toward the constellation killer and the director. On this day, someone's epilogue came to an end. How would you like to work as librarians? And someone's prologue began. Chapter 149. Prologue. 2. Now, let's talk about someone's prologue. It's been a truly joyous and gratifying time. We were in the forbidden books section of the Great Library. The other hunters had gone back, and only the librarian and I remained. The librarian seemed to want to say farewell to me separately. Below the bookcases, where old hardcovers lined up like bricks, the librarian looked incredibly small. Do you know, Death King? About what? The thing called happiness disappears quickly. The librarian smiled. Happiness is something you savor in the moment. A moment so lovely that you can't help yourself. Alas, time is an endlessly flowing stream. Happiness floats away like a maple leaf, again and again. The librarian sluggishly waved his left arm. Volumes of apocalypses flew to him and gathered in one place. Among them were apocalypses that I had overcome and apocalypses that other hunters had conquered. Plus. 22nd floor, Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon, genre, martial arts, fusion. 23rd floor, Saga of the Iron Knights in Space, genre, SF. 24th floor, Dawn Mountain Cabin Journal, genre, mystery, history. 25th floor, The Tale of Sormwin Academy, genre, romance, fantasy. 26th floor, Festival City Apocalypse, genre, sports. 27th floor, Bakery Street Epic, genre, cooking, business management. 28th floor, Me and Our Scapegoat, genre, fairy tale. 29th floor, The Tale of the Ascending City, side story, genre, school. Plus.
Ah.
How pretty. The library catalog isn't bad. Though not flawless, it is much better than the catalogs completed by the warriors of the other worlds. No, it's incomparably more admirable. So much so that I feel regretful I must give them to your world. The librarian's eyes twinkled like a little kid's. Everyone finds a personal treasure when they're young. A fake jewel made of translucent plastic or a rare white BB gun pellet mixed in among a red and black batch. A doll that was cheap but had pretty fingers. We always need a secret treasure of our own. The librarian was looking up at his personal treasure. What did the hunters of the other worlds do? They did one of two things. They chose either an easy apocalypse to challenge or an apocalypse that will be helpful to the tower. If you want to nitpick, we also did the latter. Hoo-hoo. The librarian covered his mouth with his sleeve. You're much too humble. If merely clearing the stage was your goal, there was no need for you to resolve the heavenly demon's regrets. Do you know what would have been the simplest strategy? What is it? Hiding in some secluded cavern. The librarian tapped the chronicles of the heavenly demon. As he did, the scene around us shifted. Whoosh! Light shrouded my vision. In the blink of an eye, the library disappeared. Suddenly, we were floating above a snowy mountain where gusts of snow whirled about. Hey! From what I see, we just need to wait until they die. Hunters I had never seen were hiding in a cave. Attire completely different from our worlds. I realized that they must have been hunters from a different world. Nothing really hard about it. We just need to watch for the zombies wandering around. Great! Let's all hang in there and wait it out. Looking down at them, the librarian spoke. This is a record from the far past. These hunters made an attempt at the chronicles of the heavenly demon long ago. They were climbing the tower of another world. These fellows chose to hide and wait until the heavenly demon and the Murim Lord died. 10 days after the starting point, the Murim Lord dies. The heavenly demon goes mad. While mad, she recklessly uses her innate true chi and dies. Ta-da! The stage is clear. The librarian playfully wiggled his fingers. Well, these fellows' hiding spot was poor, so the zombies caught them off guard and slaughtered them. But their strategy itself was not wrong. The chronicles of the heavenly demon would clear itself if they just waited. They only had to prepare measures against the cold, plan out provisions, and have the skills to avoid the zombies and the heavenly demon. Isn't the B-class difficulty just right? But Death King, you did not do that. The librarian looked at me. The long-ago snowstorm over the constellation's shoulders looked like a hologram. You always treated the characters as people. You gave your utmost effort. You felt anger and you felt sorrow. You accepted the stories of the apocalypses as your own. The librarian moved his left hand, tapping the Tale of Sormwin Academy this time. Whoosh! The snowscape neatly faded. We were in Raviol's basement. Raviol was standing over an unknown man, who was chained and kneeling. This is fraud. It's a fraud. The man was blood-stained as if he had been tortured. Based on the strategy guide, you love white flowers. Why isn't my favorability rising even though I bring you flowers every day, make you your favorite foods, and speak pleasantly? This is a fraud. This sort of ending makes no sense. TSK. Raviol, with a weary expression, clicked her tongue. Pathetic man. Are all constellations apostles like this? Fall for me. You're just a knockoff constellation. Hurry up and fall for me. Do the constellations see my world as the universe's trash can, by chance? Is that why they keep tossing trash one by one at me? For goodness' sake. Caring for the subjects is hard enough, but my life only continues to grow more difficult. Raviol nimbly poured poison over the man's head. His scalp began to melt. Kayak. Kiug. Aya. The man writhed at the application of the deadly poison. Raviol sighed deeply and left the basement. Bang. The basement door closed, silencing the man's screams. This, too, is one of the things that occurred in the past. The librarian shrugged. It is hard for humans to treat others as humans. I praise you for doing such a difficult task. We won't be able to meet again, but please remember that I will always cheer for you. We can't meet again? Right. I must now invite and greet the warriors of another world. The librarian chuckled. I cannot always attend to you. There are infinite worlds and towers. There are countless warriors climbing their towers, just like you all. I must greet them all because the Lord of Mansing.
Ah.
I apologize. I can say no more. The librarian held out his right hand. Good work. The librarian smiled softly. The great library of all things will disappear from the 21st floor now. A small rest area will be placed there instead. Well, I shall take special care and give you a paradisial rest area. Okay. I shook the librarian's hand. Thank you. Ooh-hoo-hoo. To think that there would come a day when I would shake hands with my favorite character and take in another favorite character as a librarian? There was a reason the librarian hesitated at the end. Squeeze. The librarian tried to release the handshake, but I did not let go. Death King? The librarian tilted his head to the side. Are you sad to be parting with me? That makes me very happy, but your world has finished the 21st to 30th floors.
Ah.
The 30th floor will also be made into a rest area. There is a book called Recuperation City Story. It is equipped with recreational facilities that are almost heavenly, and as part of my special service. Expressionlessly, I looked down at the constellation. The librarian became quiet. Death King. To use the librarian's manner of speech. Why are you doing this? Why you're scaring me? Kim Yul and the director finished their long prologue and entered the main story today. Librarian. But that wasn't all. I have something to ask you before we part. What is it? You. Since the time I beat the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon. You don't have a purpose in life anymore, right? I had been waiting for this moment. Why do you like the Constellation Killer? Lafanta Ejim is a man who kills constellations. I can understand why you would hate him, but I don't see why you would like him. On the day the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon was complete, we went down to a certain snowy mountain. A dragon, blackened by death, was before our eyes, and the librarian and I had our first candid talk. Since you're the one asking, I'll give you an answer. For a long time, I have had a dream. A dream, you say? Exactly. The librarian's eyes had shone innocently. It is to make an appearance in a novel that I enjoy. The librarian said that intervening in a novel was different from appearing in one. He confessed how he wanted to appear naturally in a story as a character on the same level as the others. I refused to intervene. That means there is only one way I can become a character in a story. I can't go up to the characters of a novel, the characters must find me. The librarian whispered like a boy with his first love. Lafanta Ejim. The Constellation Killer tirelessly murders constellations and moves between worlds. One day, he'll come to visit my world, the greatest library of all time. To kill me. That was precisely the reason the librarian loved the Constellation Killer. I am waiting for the day when the Constellation Killer visits the great library. The only way that he could become a character in a story. I look forward to seeing him stand before me one day, following his own story and his own will. On that day, I will finally appear in the story of Lafanta Ejim. The librarian had said. I ascent dying at the hands of the protagonist, the greatest epilogue. Then. I opened my mouth and spoke. You don't have one anymore. A reason to live. The librarian's face froze. What are you talking about? You said that becoming a character of a story one day is your dream. You didn't want to force yourself into the story but rather appear naturally, and the Constellation Killer was the only one who could fulfill that dream. But. I smiled. You're no longer waiting for the constellation to come kill you, right? Do you think the constellation killer who has met the director will do that? The librarian gulped. No, what are you? I don't know what you're saying. Death King, the constellation killer who has met the director is just the result of your 100 ghosts reincarnation. The constellation killer on the 50th floor is alive and well. Won't that person someday come to kill me? That is true. I gripped the librarian's right hand even more tightly. But that constellation killer is not the route that you chose. I asked you earlier. Route 1. The 50th floor constellation killer who had not met me nor forgave the director. Route 2. The constellation killer who did meet me and forgave the director. I asked him to choose one of the two to accept as the constellation killer's story. You selected the second route. Then, the librarian accepted the latter as the true history. The story of the constellation killer possessing Kim Yul and receiving the director's apology, all that had been accepted as part of the constellation killer's life. In other words, let's say that the constellation killer of the 50th floor finds you one day. Will you really be happy when that moment comes? The constellation killer who hasn't met the director. Can you accept that man who hasn't felt fury, sadness, revenge, and forgiveness as the real constellation killer? Can you accept an ending in which you are killed by that constellation killer? The librarian likely didn't think this far, but he had basically destroyed his own dream. There's no way that you could. Because you're someone who worships stories more than anything. You would never want to die at the hands of an extra you don't accept. Just so you know, there is no use denying it. Because I could see clearly before my eyes just who the constellation loved. Character window. Plus. Name, corner librarian. Favorability, 99. Favorite genres, fusion, romance, mystery, adventure, horror, history, war, sports, SF, myth, fairy tales. Disliked genres, not applicable. Favorite characters, character, Death King, Kim Yul. Disliked characters, not applicable. Favorite plot, story. Hated plot, serial discontinuation. Plus. The constellation killer's name had been changed to Kim Yul. The order had also changed. My name was originally behind the constellation killers, but now, it came before. It meant that the librarian had come to love my story more as the constellation killer's story ended. Silence. The librarian's face was blank. He looked like he couldn't believe it. Death King, what have you? Since when did you plan? That day. I planned this from the day I heard your dream on that snowy mountain. Of course, I hadn't worked out all the details back then. But I had already drawn the big picture at the time. A project to make him like me more than the constellation killer. So I chased after the constellation killer persistently, maybe even obsessively. To hunt a constellation. Hamustra. The librarian startled at his true name. You have 2 paths left to you. 2 paths. You can live here, forever unable to see your dream come true. You say,
Goodbye.
To me. You throw away the hope that the constellation killer will grant your wish one day, invite in and greet the hunters that treat characters like trash, and spend your days secluded in the library like you have always done. You. The librarian trembled slightly. Naturally unable to break my grip, he squirmed. But the physical strength of the librarian was insignificant, and my right hand held on firmly. If you don't want that, give it to me. What? What are you referring to? The book that contains your story. The prey I've hunted for so long. Give me the book in which your life is recorded. It wasn't an apocalypse that recorded the fall of another world nor contained a different world at all. It was this place. It was the book that contained the corner librarian, who lived in the great library of all things. I will make it into the 30th floor of this tower. Then, you would naturally become a member of our tower as well. Do you get it? You would become a character in our story. Become our colleague. The librarian's mouth dropped open. Ascend the tower with me, Hamustra. Chapter 150. Prologue. 3.
Oh.
Awesome library. In ancient times, there was a being called the Pond of Accumulating Memories. Humans could not pronounce the name of this being properly. The Pond of Accumulating Memories was just an arbitrary, fictitious name. The real pronunciation was. Just as humans do not care about what a cricket may call them, did not feel the need to use the human's designation. The most simplified pronunciation of the being's name would be close to something like Hamustra. The atmosphere is pleasant, and the collection is excellent, too. Hamustra. That was what the humans called the Pond of Accumulating Memories. I gladly acknowledge it. But the human before him was different. This is the best library that my humble self has visited. This human could use dragon speech at will. That in itself was fascinating. The Pond of Accumulating Memories was in existence with great curiosity to begin with. There was a high chance that he would like and be interested in this little being. Nobody had stepped foot in this library thus far except for this human, his first visitor. Who are you? The human before him was emitting a truly vulgar smell. It was weird. The Pond of Accumulating Memories could smell a dragon, but the being before him was not a dragon. It gave off a godlike aura, but the being was not a god either. The Pond of Accumulating Memories had never seen a being like the human in front of him. How did you come here? Naturally, there was a vigilance to his tone. I never allowed your entrance. This is my world. Reveal your purpose, stranger. I'm not a book thief. Please don't be too wary. The human snickered. I am a sort of traveling insurance agent. I am visiting every existence like you and to persuade you. I asked about your purpose. I am building a house. No, should I call it a villa? If I am the landlord, I am trying to convince you to become my tenant. The human snickered again. The Pond of Accumulating Memories was annoyed. He felt annoyed for the first time in thousands of years, or maybe more than double that. He loved all characters in books, not discriminating between the good and evil. He treated the luckless and the fortunate equally, but real life was different. The Pond of Accumulating Memories was a great being. The definition of greatness was subjective, but in the Pond's opinion, greatness was the ability to hit or kill those that annoyed him. Pest. Go away. The Pond decided to use his greatness today as well. He lightly exhibited his power. In the library, the Pond's strength was absolute. Tough guys who had reached transcendence, and ordinary people, of course, could only be torn apart and turned into dust. The Pond was confident. A long time ago, before he had become as great as he was now, he had disintegrated many things.
Ah.
I'm sorry. The human before him did not turn to dust. The human was fine. I just ruined the mood. But can't you speak with me just a little more? I worked hard to make it all the way here. Phew. The roads were blocked, and they were in poor shape, too. The Pond was surprised that its greatness had no effect. It was a huge shock. It was such a huge shock that the Pond fled from reality. His attack just then didn't show his power? It was invalid. He was treating it like it hadn't happened. The Pond finished excusing himself and attacked the human again. Now that I brought it up, I have to ask. Is there no door in this library? Is this some sort of grave? You should poke out some windows, at least. It's stuffy and suffocating. The human was still all right. Should I make some for you? Even worse, the human blew a hole in the library. While smiling a little.
Ah.
The air's finally flowing now. The pawn's mind went blank. What the fuck? It was the first time he cursed in thousands and thousands of years. The library wasn't just a simple area for books. It was like the body and soul of the pond. The fact that the human could pierce a hole through the library walls meant the human could easily cut up his underbelly. The pond was capable enough to connect the dots, and he was smart enough not to want to be slashed. I get it. I surrender. What do you want from me? I want your everything. I'd rather die.
Ah.
Should I? Can I kill you? The pond was quite clever. At least, he was intelligent enough to realize the human in front of him was fucking insane. As expected, you don't want to die, right? Of course not. Life is a precious thing. Now, my humble self also wishes to help you. Please sign here to keep your precious life. It was unfortunate for the pond that the nut job had unimaginable power. What is this? It's a contract. Can I ask what sort of contract it is? Yes, of course. I'm not a gangster. Even if the human wasn't technically a gangster, the human wasn't very far from one. But the pond did not point it out. Again, the pond was smart. He knew what he could and could not say. I am building a tower. Tower. I will bring in beings like you. I will also allow the beings you consider insignificant creatures to enter. The pond cautiously read the contract. As he did, his expression changed. At first, he thought that the human was a crazy ruffian here to steal from his library. The ruffian part was right. So was the crazy part. But the human was not a thief. The contract was filled with enticing offers. You're going to let me peek inside all worlds? Really? Not all worlds. Only the worlds I have a hand in. These confidentiality clauses. You must absolutely keep them. The pond didn't need long to decide. However, his curiosity deepened. Why are you starting this business? It was interesting. What is it for? What advantage does it bring you? Nobody chooses to be born. The human smiled. Everyone should be able to live one more life. It may not be the life they want, but they would live because they chose to live. The pond couldn't understand the human's smile. Someday, you too will live another life, Mr. Corner Librarian. He couldn't understand those words, either. The librarian looked up at me blankly. Did he not understand me? Or did it just not hit him yet? Either way, it was all right. I did not rush the librarian and waited for him. You want me to climb the tower with you, the librarian murmured after a long time had passed. I am no an ordinary constellation. Unlike the spirit possessing you or the holy sword tied to you, I am officially entrusted with this stage. Despite my looks, I am of a high class. To belong to this particular tower is. If you do, what happens? I do not know. I don't know at all. Nothing like this has ever happened in the history of the tower. The librarian's shoulders shook. There are instances of constellations being enthralled and acting as some warrior's attendants. Quite a lot of them. And like how you swallowed the Devil King of Fall Rain with your 100 Ghosts reincarnation, warriors have collected constellations, too. But I have never heard of a constellation becoming a hunter. Then you can be recorded as the first. Hamustra. Don't live in this sort of place. I looked around. It was a tomb of books. The traces of past worlds were gathered here. That was all. In this place, time did not flow. Only the breath spilled by other people and stories of other worlds were sealed here. It's familiar. Just a place where you longed for and envied the worlds of others. This place. It's familiar to me. The room that I rented before regressing came to mind. In my room, I had put up many pictures and interviews of the Flame Emperor. The scale was pathetic compared to the Great Library, but in essence, it's the same. That was why I could say this. Step up to the ring. Now. You had to come out of here. People get weirder and weirder when they stay in this sort of place. I am weird. A person's life is recorded in an apocalypse. You may think that you know everything about the person by reading it, but that's not the case. Hamustra, do you remember what was written about the destruction of the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon? The apocalypse narrated my master's death like this. The heavenly demon suddenly succumbed to the epidemic and died. What kind of nonsense is that? It says nothing. Nothing at all. What expression Master wore at the end, the cultists' voices as they mourned, how hard the children by the riverside worked to dig out the soft mud, you could never learn that from reading the book. You couldn't. However, protested the librarian. I can see and observe them. That's true, I accept it easily. You can enter the worlds yourself to observe the events. When Master passed on, you must have grieved as I did. Of that, I have no doubt. Then there's no problem. But you wouldn't have been sadder than I was. You, too, must have held your breath when Master died in the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon. You would have felt awe when the Sword Emperor struck. But the thing you felt? It was only appreciation. Squeeze. I held the librarian's hand a little tighter and pulled him in closer. I bet you also love Raviel. You like her. But you know, you'll never love Raviel as much as I love her. You've only had a taste, sitting inside this library. You've never put your life on stage, you only lived as the audience. If you enjoyed a performance, you clap. If not, you yawn. That's all. Come live with us. The librarian twitched. I'm bound by a strict contract. If I attach myself to a specific tower or violate the rules, I'll definitely be punished by the tower. I would probably lose all the authority of a constellation. I would be useless like that. I would be of no use to you. This isn't that kind of story. And you know it, too. Hamustra. I looked straight at the person before me. Dying by the constellation killer's hands one day was your dream. Throw away that dream now. I'll give you a new dream. This dream won't always be happy, and there will be many times when it feels like a nightmare instead. There will be many parts you want to erase. But if it's what you desire, I'll stay in that dream. I spoke again. Live a life with me. You would appear in my dream, and I would appear in yours, and you and I can be we. The librarian's lips were trembling. And his left hand, which was shaking even more than his lips, reached into his pocket. He pulled out a book that was thinner than the Epic of Lafanta Ejim. Plus. I couldn't read the title. It was the language of a world that we could not comprehend. The librarian, no, Hamustra, handed me the book that contained his life. Death King. Yes. I will give you my final advice as a reader. I'm your biggest fan. There is no reader who loves you as much as I, and there never will be. So please, remember this well. I'll listen. If you overuse your flirting like this, someone may misunderstand. Please use that sort of language with only Duchess Ivantia. Otherwise, Duchess Ivantia will stab your heart and kill you, Death King. I already died that way once, but I'll heed your words. Death King. Yes. Is living as a human enjoyable? The librarian was frightened. I smiled. It sucks. I grabbed hold of. It's like hard taffy, but even taffy is delicious when you chew it. Your teeth may break sometimes, but I'll help you. Damn. The librarian looked close to tears. To think something like this will make up the final lines of my apocalypse. He held the spine of the book while I held the cover. Life doesn't work so smoothly. It's like a piece of art. Cope with it. We opened the final apocalypse. His voice was scared and tearful, but his words were firm when he spoke. Death King. Corner Librarian. I designate these two as characters of. The difficulty of this apocalypse is undecided. When you open your eyes, the highly acclaimed ending of the story will. When we open our eyes, we'll probably just be here. As you say. The librarian looked up at me. That moment. I declare this stage cleared. Whoosh. White light wrapped around us. Chapter 151. Prologue. 4. The library became brighter in an instant. The light was just like a white current of water. It moved like it was alive. The light water torrentially poured from Hamustra's apocalypse. The waves of life swept over our surroundings, spilling between the bookshelves. The light flooded. Stage clear. The apocalypse did not stop spewing light. Schwack. Whoosh. The level of the light water quickly rose, submerging the building-high bookshelves of the great library. Even the forbidden books, which had not seen light for 1,000 years, were brilliantly illuminated. A white flood. A pure white pond. Today. We stood in the center of the flood of light that drowned the world. The 30th floor stage has been cleared. The screams of hunters far away entered my ears. Kayak. What is this? They must have been caught off guard by the unexpected flood of light. But thankfully, my reliable colleagues were in the library. There were many of them. For every panicking hunter, there was someone to console them. Though I couldn't see their faces behind the bookshelves, I could make out each of their voices. Good grief. I'm dying. I thought my vision was going dark these days, but it's completely gone the other way. Eesh. Oh, my. You. Shouldn't a young gun make some medicine for an old man without being asked? Medicine King. Yes, but we have to distribute medicine to the people who need it first. I'm sorry, but you don't seem to need it much, Medicine King. What about getting fitted for new glasses instead? Alchemist.
Ah.
This is just the stage being cleared. It's merely light. You guys may not have experienced this before, but I've seen it several times already. A mysterious thing, you become accustomed to it the more often it occurs. Anyway, I'm saying that you shouldn't act rashly.
Oh.
Master. We believe in you. Venomous Snake and his peons. Huh? Oh. Did the 30th floor clear on its own? Aha. I'm happy that we saved some time. Guild members of the 10,000 Temple, prepare to transmit. We need to catch up on our work as soon as we return to Babylon. Heretic Questioner. How troubling. I have no experience working as a librarian. I know the basics, Kim Yul-ssi. I'll help you. Please. The constellation killer and the director. That wasn't all. The Black Dragon Master, the Count, and the Crusaders' voices were there, too. People's voices, some far, some quite close, passed through the bookshelves filled with thick hardcover books. Yes, the whispers of the people in the library all came to me. It was as if the surge of light was drawing in the sounds. By my side, the small librarian was shaking. Announcing to everyone again. Today, the 30th floor stage has been bzzzzz. A static noise was mixed with the tower's voice. The librarian, who had already been trembling, flinched. Warning! An abnormal challenge has been detected. Giving a warning to the corner librarian.
Ugh.
The librarian grabbed my sleeve. It doesn't matter. I've chosen as the 30th stage. I stand by this as the administrator of the 21st to 30th stages. As the constellation governing, I acknowledge the stage as being cleared. Repeating the warning. The corner librarian will receive an immense penalty if the stage clear is announced. Confirming whether to proceed with the stage clear nonetheless. My sleeves were scrunched with more force. The librarian's shoulders were stooped in. Usually, he looked bigger than he was because of the oversized clothes he wore. He didn't look big now. He was small. The space that the librarian took up in this world was trifling. Leaning against my chest, the librarian looked up at me. I don't care. He was speaking to both the tower and me. Said Hamustra, I'm going to live in this tower. Please, accept my resignation, Lord of Mansing. For a moment, it was quiet. Then, announcing to everyone again. The white noise cleared away from the tower's voice. Today, the 30th floor stage has been cleared. The announcement was received with an outburst of triumphant cheers. The library was still flooded with light, but the hunters heard the announcement. They were elated by the thought they had finally succeeded. But there was a voice that only Hamustra and I could hear. The corner librarian cannot maintain his authority. Starting class modification. I had heard this phrase a long time ago. They were the same words as when Preta lost her shell of being the Devil King of Fall Rain. The corner librarian is being stripped of his title. At that time, Preta had screamed, no. She had been dismayed at losing her status as a constellation. She had struggled to stop her descent. Hamustra's reaction now was different. Without a word, he squeezed his eyes shut. Announcing once again. The corner librarian is being stripped of his title. The corner librarian is being stripped of his authority. The apocalypse that Hamustra and I held in our hands slipped. Maybe I should say that it melted away instead. Drip. Drip. The cover of the book turned into mushy slime and plopped down, and the papers became like melted wax as they dripped down too. May luck be with you. Then, the apocalypse turned into light and disappeared. For a while, Hamustra didn't say anything. He quietly breathed in and breathed out. As his small torso rose and fell repeatedly, Hamustra, who had been trembling in fear, slowly calmed down. Hamustra hopped in place. Look at this, Death King. His long sleeves flapped. The sleeves were so long that he couldn't get them off the floor. As Hamustra jumped in place, the sleeves rose up very slightly but receded back down to the floor. I can't fly. Hamustra looked at me and smiled. I can no longer fly in the air. But I loved watching the worlds from above, all day long. It was my hobby. Or looking out at the horizon for weeks. My hobbies have disappeared. Yes. Many things are gone now too. Yes. My dream came true. My dream to enter a story myself came true, and I'm happy. I really am, but I'm scared. I'm afraid. I love you and the others. I care for you all. I'm scared that you and the others will not like me. I want to be loved by everyone. Hamustra. I put my hand on Hamustra's shoulder. Stop dreaming about impossible things. Let's take it step by step. Your hobbies are gone, but you can find new ones. How about it? Is there anything you want to do to commemorate your fall as a constellation? Actually, I have 2 wishes. Tell me. If I can grant them, I will. First, please stop speaking formally to me. That was a wish I could fulfill. Okay. Sure. What's your other wish? My second wish is a little expensive. It's so extravagant that you are certain to shudder like there is an earthquake, Death King. What is it? Hamustra wiped his eyes with his sleeve. He sniffled. A long time later, when he lowered his arm, Hamustra was smiling. I want to drink a white mocha frappuccino venti quattro shot java chip half and half chocolate drizzle. It really was an extravagant luxury. But thankfully, that too was a wish I could grant. There was an afterword I want to share. I see. That was why my wife had died. Raviel was speaking while wearing a school uniform and drinking cider. There. Anyone in the know would understand how miraculous of a collaboration the previous statement was. Look. Wearing a school uniform, Raviel drank cider. Even the epic creation and destruction of the universe could not approach the sublime quality of that sentence. I was feeling the same emotions as a church member who witnessed with his own 2 eyes the creation of the Gongja. You're shaking. I am not. Is that so? Raviel, whom I was holding in a princess hold, tilted her head. Just so you know, it had been over 3 hours since I assumed this position. Using aura was forbidden. Skills, too. I had to hold out with pure brute strength and mental fortitude. No matter how I look at it, you're shaking. The tip of Raviel's mouth arched up. Could it be that I'm heavy? You aren't heavy. You're as light as a feather, Raviel. What kind of feather? A dinosaur feather? An Archaeopteryx feather? You're lighter than the feather of a newly hatched chick. Thank goodness. I almost felt so bad that I was going to leave my beloved's embrace. But since you say there's no problem, I will happily enjoy your wonderful grasp. Raviel put the cider can against her lips. A drop of clear cider was daubed on her lips. Oh, how I hated that drop of cider. I wished it would evaporate. Evaporate and return to the embrace of Mother Nature. To explain the situation, we were on the 29th floor, the world of The Tale of the Ascending City, side story. As Hamustra warned, the side story did not change the history of the outside world. It couldn't be a part of true history. Only the city, with Shinseo Middle and High School as the focus, was pulled out like a deserted island to become this stage. The inhabitants of this world don't notice anything strange, almost magically. When hunters like us entered the 29th floor, they were automatically enrolled as middle or high school students. They could live as if they had always been a student in this world. There was also a university, but that was all. It was literally a university town. To sum it up, the stage was completely useless except for the fact that you could go to school, but public education is a wonderful thing. That, too, was surprisingly useful. It is a place where even those who are less wealthy can learn to their heart's content. Isn't it a dreamlike system? Our empire also plans to send talented individuals here for study abroad. As expected, my love is more than qualified to be called the moon of the Ivantia Duchy. They probably won't be able to learn much. That doesn't matter. The purpose of education is to share common knowledge. A nation is an abstract concept that can slip into a delusion with a single misstep, so we must take action to ensure all members of the nation can share the same dream. The same dream. I've been pondering how to put the people of the tower in harmony with the empire's citizens. The imperial citizens who are educated here can bridge the two forces. Raviel sometimes talked about difficult topics. She was so cool. Anyway, the reason I was holding Raviel for over 3 hours was this. Well, let's continue talking politics later. Right now, I want to savor your punishment. Right. I was currently being punished. It was obvious why. I was really surprised, Gongja. Who wouldn't be if you regressed 24 hours while working in your office? I paused for a moment, but I figured out the situation soon enough. Of course. My wife must have died somewhere again. Raviel pulled out a golden card. Plus. A regressor's love. Rank EX. Effect. For a regressor, love is like poison. No matter how much you struggle, you can't share your time with the one you love. Thus, a certain regressor begged. Please retain my lover's memories. That wish reached the tower and became true. You share a timeline with your beloved. When your lover regresses a day, you go back a day. When you regress a day, your lover regresses a day. This is the covenant of the ring. This is the marriage of time. May luck be with you both. However, the skill only works when you and your beloved love each other. Plus. Right. Because of a regressor's love, when I died, Raviel also regressed 24 hours. When I was killed by the constellation killer, Raviel underwent the regression, too. Of course Raviel knew that I died. According to the Golden Silk, who was working as a servant for the Ivantia Duchy, Raviel muttered, I don't know where, but a bitch just touched my wife, as soon as she regressed. With a blank face. A blank expression. The Golden Silk felt cosmic horror that day. I'm sorry. No. You needn't apologize, Raviel said calmly. From what you say, you've worked more than hard enough. Didn't you try desperately not to die? If you died regardless, I couldn't blame you. Alright? I couldn't blame you if you jumped ahead to the 50th floor when you just made it to the 29th floor, picked a fight with the strongest person on the 50th floor, and pulled an aggro move on the entire floor. My love, everything you did was perfectly reasonable. Nothing about it was reckless at all. I understand. I'm really sorry. Are you truly sorry? Do you know what you did wrong? Raviel pinched my cheek. Streech. My cheek lengthened like fresh mochi. I was moved. Raviel is pinching my cheek. My eyes beheld the sight of her in a school uniform. I held Raviel, in the uniform, in my arms. Was this really a punishment? Wasn't this a reward, instead? Maybe Raviel, my goddess, was praising me under the guise of discipline. This is no good. This man. Raviel lamented. Your eyes have gone bad. Though your slightly strange tastes are charming, this has become serious. I love you, Raviel. I love you, Gongja. The scent of cider. I liked it. I was so happy. Fuck. The uninvited guest clamored behind me. Do I have to see this? Shh. *T every time these guys meet? Huh? Can't be, right? This is kind of bad, isn't it? Love is said to be caused by hormones, but these two take that to the next level. What did I do wrong in my past life to witness this hell? Shiny thinks that you must have committed many sins. Fuck. A hero ought to ignore the peanut gallery. While listening to my story, Raviol toured around Shinseo Middle and High School. I talked about who had killed me, what his past was, what he lost, and what he gained back. Raviol examined the classrooms and the rooftop as I led her. Raviol nodded. Good job, Gongja. This was worth your time. She understood. While I endured pain in my arms and heaven in my mind for 3 long hours, if I had to choose between my arms and my brain, I thought that it was an overall win. A huge win. Now, I should see the mug of the man who killed you myself. Raviol. I said this earlier, but that person is probably your ancestor. That's even more disgraceful. An ancestor should kindly leave the work to their descendants, but he dared to touch the moon of the family? The current Ivansha belongs to me. I must crush him according to the family rules. Sorry, Constellation Killer. I'm sorry, Kim Yul. You're dead meat now. And Raviol smiled. On the rooftop of Shinseo Middle and High School, the setting sun in the sky shone a red light on Raviol's lips. I want to greet the one who has raised you. Will you take me to them, Gongja? I nodded. Yes. Then, with Raviol still in my arms, I whispered. Transmit. Light enveloped us. In the next moment, we were at the library on the 30th floor. Though it had only been a few days, the library changed a bit. First of all, accessible and restricted areas were strictly divided. The bookshelves in the accessible area were decorated with ordinary books, and hunters leisurely read at the tables. It was a tranquil scene. On the tables where the hunters sat were coffee cups or glasses with drinks. Hamustra, who had been going around the tables, noticed and approached us right away. Instead of his loose-fitting clothes, Hamustra was wearing a neat employee uniform. Welcome, Death King. Oh. The silver-plated heart has come, too. Such dignified guests have all come together. A library cafe. Hamustra had decided to work here for now. Though he didn't feel confident enough to go down to the city on the first floor, he had decided to slowly interact with the hunters and live as a human.
Yeah.
Is Kim Yul around? Raviol wanted to see Kim Yul's face. Mug, my wife. Raviol said she wanted to see Kim Yul's mug. Hamustra beamed. It's worth traveling so far to see Kim Yul's face. I understand. He should be organizing children's books right now, but I'll call him. There was still a lot to talk about. Who had taken over to manage the great library after Hamustra's downfall, how the Medicine King came to foot the bill to set up the cafe like he had bet everything, why, even now, the Medicine King was wearing a bartender outfit at the cafe counter and making coffee, etc., etc. The story was far from over, but there would be other opportunities to talk about them. Then, I'll show you two to your seats. Like always, that story would continue on a stage a little higher than the last. Chapter 152. Soaring. 1. The ties between people are strange. For example, you make a friend and later find out that he's the grandson of the old man who owns the supermarket in your neighborhood, a small connection. Or the hunter you've admired for 10 years turns out to be an insane psychopath, he kills you, then you kill him, and now, your fates are connected, something like that. No, let's stop there. That case is too specific. Anyway, the essence of what I'm saying is simple. The ties between people are really indiscernible. I'd met many weird and mysterious people thus far, but the peculiarities of human connections continued to awe me. Hey, Kim Gongja. It's been a while since I've seen you, but you look great. Specifically, I was awed by the person I was on a video call with. Somehow, you look more handsome than you did when we were young. Your face looks really smooth. I'm so jealous. You know, maybe I should have just followed you to the tower when we left the orphanage. Kim Gongja, over here? The air is bad, and the people are bad. It's no place to live. A man my age was chattering non-stop. He wore a tidy suit. I chanted the name of the man whose hair was parted 9:1. Kim Hanbija. No. I'm Kim Hanbai now, okay? I changed my name. I heard from the director that you're wearing the badge of the National Assembly. Congrats, bud. This guy was probably the most successful among our age group in the orphanage since he was a representative in the National Assembly. The director always used to say that it would be good to get lucky and climb to a higher position, but it wasn't easy for young people like us to climb up. Ganja, I feel like I'm just the tail of a snake compared to you. Haven't you seen the internet? You're so popular. You've contributed a lot to raising our country's prestige. Sorry. I've been cut off from the internet these past few days, so I didn't know. Huh, really? That's surprising. Anyways, bud. Do me a favor. Kim Hanbija smiled softly. I'm running for my constituency in the next general election. Unfortunately, since I'm young and fresh, I don't really have anything to appeal to the people. So what I'm saying is, would it be okay for me to promote that Kim Ganja and I were best friends back in the orphanage? No, you can't. I nodded my head. Good luck, counselor. Do good politics. Politics that puts the people first. I ask that you uphold clean and honest politics. Ha. Ah. Hey. Hanbija's expression became desperate. Gongja. Please help me. I need your help. I'm sorry I didn't contact you till now. I should have known that you'd make it that far in the tower. Oh one picture. I'll make a poster. Please help me wear the assembly member badge one more time. Click. I hung up the phone without any hesitation. The last image that was displayed on the screen was that of my childhood friend crying and begging. When I saw it, a thought came to my mind. I became successful in the tower. A childhood friend who had never contacted me before had called me. I couldn't believe that I'd received such a pitiful request from a member of the National Assembly. This was something that I couldn't have even dreamed of before I regressed 4,000 times. Brrrr. As soon as I hung up, my phone rang again. It was Hanbija. I became a bit annoyed. Hello. Gongja, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the way we used to play together when we were young. This guy. He really had become a politician, hadn't he? This shamelessness was truly something to behold. I'm sure you're busy, but could you just listen to what I have to say for a moment? I don't think I need to hear any more. Gongja. I know that nationality has very little meaning in the tower. But we're both still Korean. This could be considered a personal connection. Right now, there are a lot of people who favor the National Assembly, the party, and you, Gongja. I will not be a pushover just to enjoy some favor. Tell us what you want. Clean politics? I'd like you to work towards the peace of mankind. Not the impossible. You idiot. Indeed. It was impossible. If it was impossible, then there was nothing I could do about it. Oh, right. At that moment, an idea popped into my head. There's something I'd like to ask. As expected. There's no way that you wouldn't want anything at all. What is it? You can tell me anything. The party is willing to do whatever it can. I even received a blank check before calling you. How reliable. I smiled slightly. Do you happen to know anyone named Huang Yunxiu? Confucius said human relationships are very strange. Sometimes, the person who was thought to be dead could get their revenge. 2. Well, that's what happened. It was a natural and reasonable process. After hearing my story, the Sword Saint nodded. I also received a lot of similar requests when I was ranked number 1. Politicians, businessmen, and even people from my family contacted me hundreds and thousands of times. Even the Swedes are like that? Regardless of where they live, people are all the same. Clang! The Sword Saint's sword clashed with mine. We were having a leisurely conversation, but our hands and feet were busy. We were fighting to improve each other's skills. I was also listening to advice on living in the world. You have authority now. And a very special authority at that. After all, you gained this authority through your achievements and skills instead of political tactics or machinations, didn't you? The outside world adores you. The hunters in the tower admire you. You're painting too much gold on my face. Old man. The more I say it, the more careful you'll be. Kid. The Sword Saint swung his sword. Shriek. The sharp sword strike was aimed at my wrist. I raised my blade at an angle, allowing the sword to glance off of it. This was an attack that my eyes would not have been able to follow in the past. Am I not being careful already? But now, I was able to chat like this while we exchanged blows back and forth. At times, I was even able to counter. Whoosh! I released aura from my blade and caught the Sword Saint's sword. The Sword Saint furrowed his eyebrows. Your usage of aura is outstanding. I heard that I'm more talented in aura than in swordsmanship. I don't know where you heard that, but it's true. Aura is mental. Its power is entirely dependent on how intense your mind image is, and its strength can vary greatly. What were you just thinking about? A house, filled with flames. Trapped there was a group of children with their hands and feet bound. No matter how hard they struggled, they could not free themselves from their bindings. It hurts. Please forgive me. I moved my aura while thinking about the hands and feet of the children that were bound by the restraints. Shackles and chains. Writhing and struggling. With my aura driven by that image, the Sword Saint's sword was firmly held in place. Nothing much. I smiled. It's a trade secret. So I can't just reveal it to you for free. The Sword Saint's blue eyes flickered slightly. There is something that I deeply lament. Like conceding the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon to the Chenmu Guild. Maybe I should have done more, even if it meant using force. You're starting to regret things that happened in the past? You must be really tired. Cheeky brat. The Sword Saint smiled. I have no intention of conceding the number 1 rank. Blue aura exploded from the Sword Saint's sword. Bang! The pressure spread out as if a pocket of compressed air had exploded. I quickly used my aura to suppress the explosion. A youthful laugh escaped the old man's mouth. Good. The Sword Saint didn't stop with the explosion. Whoosh! Whoosh! Like a typhoon, the Sword Saint continued to unleash his blue aura. I stepped back, carefully cutting down the sword strikes hurtling towards me one after the other. So this is the joy that comes from finding a rival. The sword saint was visibly delighted. I didn't think you'd grow this much when we raced through the Egyptian Empire together. It really is impossible to judge a book by its cover. I'm so glad that a young man like you appeared. The wind blades surged like a storm. By the time I cut one down, another took its place. Clang! I was somehow able to use my sword and my aura to block it, but my movements were starting to become sloppier. Aren't you enjoying yourself too much? This is fun. The Chinmumun Guild is improving day by day, and your skills are also increasing at an alarming rate. I feel like this life is truly worth living. The old man's laughter echoed across the field. They were on the first floor of the tower, in an empty lot outside of the city of Ascension, Babylon. Many hunters had come to watch their spar. These hunters watched with their eyes wide open, recorded, and even wrote notes in their little notebooks. Amazing! Is such a fight possible after one master's aura? That shouldn't be the case. The aura being displayed by these two. As expected, the Sword Saint is still superior to the Death King. That's the popular opinion, isn't it? The spirit of victory boiled in his heart. Good. I'll show you. I still considered myself to be weaker than the Sword Saint. But what I thought was different from what other people thought. Very different. Sword Saint old man. What is it? Personally, I don't like showing off unfinished moves. I feel it's not considerate to my opponent. Tot. I cut one of the wind blades unleashed by the Sword Saint before stepping back, widening the distance between us. However, you and I aren't ordinary rivals, old man. Ho! Instead of chasing or pressuring me, the Sword Saint simply lowered his blade. It seemed that he was interested in what I had to say. I'm not sure I understand, Death King. Do we have some kind of special connection? That's right. I smiled. Aren't we both disciples of the same sect? The old man's expression became stiff. He knew that I was not talking about the demonic cult. I was talking about the Sword Emperor, Beihurayong. Just like me, Beihurayong was also attached to the Sword Saint. In the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon, Beihurayong acted against my master. The scene of Beihurayong and my master performing the Battle of Wits had been broadcasted in the tower. Since it was aired, every hunter in the tower could watch it to their heart's content, and naturally, this meant the Sword Saint could as well. It was impossible for him to not recognize him. Most hunters might not have understood what they witnessed that day. However, even if no one else knew, the Beihurayong who was with the Sword Saint would know. It's natural. Because it was a martial art that he himself had created. How could he not recognize it? We both have the same Beihurayong. Now, we were both aware of my Beihurayong and the Sword Saint's Beihurayong. He had definitely realized the other's existence. And yet, the Sword Saint old man didn't ask me anything. He must have been waiting for me to mention it first. He really is considerate. However, he probably couldn't have imagined that I would bring it up at a time like this. He probably thought I would confess while we were talking in a private place. This was proven by the fact that the Sword Saint appeared shocked and began to look around at our surroundings. No. Young man. Death King. If you say that here. Are you shocked? I smiled broadly. That's good. Old man. Please become even more shocked. What are you? This is my unfinished move. Please accept it. I pounced towards the old man. That's right. I only brought Beihurayong up to catch the old man by surprise. Wow. You cheap bastard. It's fine if you do whatever you can in a fight, but this. Despite his words, Bei Hurayong, who appeared behind me, spoke in a tone that seemed to be filled with admiration. So with this praise coming from behind, I lifted up the holy sword and swung it down. The image I should think of is the fire from the house. The fire that burned there. The suffocating smoke. Aura exploded from my body. Reddish tentacles seemed to swarm from every direction. My aura engulfed the small field like a raging fire, suffocating all living beings within it. The empty lot soon became a fiery hell. The Sword Saint finally reacted then. He hurriedly roused his blue aura to counter mine. Unfortunately for him, I wasn't done yet. I don't want to die. Resentment. So hungry. Craving. I want to live. Hope. I compress these emotions into my aura. Every single strand of aura carried the voice of a different child. Thus, they each burned in different paths with different intensities. The flames became a living entity that attacked the Sword Saint. The Sword Saint hurriedly blocked the flames. Left, right, front, and back, he had to cut flames coming from every direction. Naturally, the Sword Saint couldn't help but leave an opening when dealing with such an attack. And I charged at that opening like an animal. Infernal Heaven's Reformation. First formula. The Burning Young Sword. I decided to make it my own infernal heaven. The old man's eyes widened as he saw this move. I'm sorry. I win this fight. I fiercely slammed my sword towards the Sword Saint's head. Chapter 153. Soaring. 2. Hup. In the end, the Sword Saint was still the Sword Saint. So even though he was shocked, he still swung his sword. If I hadn't shaken him beforehand, he probably would have been able to block my attack. However, this time I was one step ahead of him. My holy sword was pointed at the old man's neck. I stopped. The old man glanced at the sword that was only 5 centimeters away from his neck and stopped as well. As a last-ditch effort, the Sword Saint had lifted his sword to my neck, but it was over 15 centimeters away. Whoo! I chuckled. I won. Old man. The Sword Saint's expression crumpled rapidly. This doesn't count. Invalid. It's invalid.
Ha!
I don't know what you're talking about. A win is a win. Are you going to cry out that it's invalid after losing on the battlefield? Huh? I didn't know you were like that, old man. But there should still be a limit. This, what? This was shameless. What? Shameless? Wasn't that a compliment? Poo-ha-ha. Thanks a lot, old man. I never thought I'd hear the Sword Saint call me shameless. I finally feel that this life is worth living. I hope you live a long, healthy life. You. The Sword Saint's face trembled slightly. If looks could kill, I probably would have died already. But the more he glared at me like that, the happier I felt. I was holding myself back from talking about our master. I was waiting out of consideration for you. How could you trample on an old man's heart so carelessly? Sure, loser. Loser. Humph. We fought 53 times so far, and I won 52 times. If I have 52 wins and 1 loss out of 53 fights, then I'm naturally the winner. The last fight is always the most important. Don't you know the tale of the Hegemon King, Xiangyu won? Even if you fight 100 battles and win 99 of them, if you lose one time, you're a loser. If you are Xiangyu, then I am Liu Bang. I'm the master of the world. Then we should fight another round. Humph. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight for the next 6 months. Instead, I'm going to spread the news that I beat the Sword Saint to everyone I know for 6 months. Then I'll think about fighting you again. Who? Ku, Hook. At that moment, the Sword Saint looked like he was about to pass out. It was as if his heart and blood vessels were obstructed and his blood flow was restricted. I said a silent prayer for the old man. Then, a voice came from not so far away. It seems you two are very close. Pot. Someone appeared in the air before landing lightly on the ground. It was the Black Dragon Master. The spectators around the field immediately went into an uproar as the Black Dragon Master appeared with a teleport skill. The top 3 hunters were all gathered in one place. Huh. The Black Dragon Master finally realized there were other people there. She smiled and waved her hand. Click. Click. The hunters hurriedly took out their phones and began taking pictures of the 3 of us. Only then did the Black Dragon Master turn to look at us with a strange expression on her face. The Death King has always been childish, so that's nothing strange, but... Sword Saint, what happened to you? Did you hang out with the Death King too much? Did that end up lowering your mental age? Except for your aloof image, you are utterly rotten. I don't want to hear that from a witch who pretends to act coy. Right. Now that I think about it, you were a bit passionate when you first entered the tower. I can just barely remember, but I don't really miss it. The Black Dragon Master's eyes narrowed slightly as she remembered the past. But it was only for a brief moment. The Black Dragon Master immediately schooled her expression and told us why she was there. I don't care if you act like children another time, but for today, please show an image befitting the 1st and 2nd ranked. Except for you two, all of the other rankers have gathered in the Great Library. Huh? Tilting my head slightly, I sheath my holy sword. Did something happen? Somehow, you're able to do it every day without getting tired of it, but... Humph. Today is important. The Black Dragon Master muttered softly. We're going to open the 31st floor. It had already been 56 days since we cleared the Great Library. For the past 2 months, the days had been hectic. What? We had a hard time clearing the 21st to 30th floors, so we could take a rest? That was only true for ordinary hunters. Top hunters, like the Black Dragon Master and me, were rather busy. To put it bluntly, I was so busy, I felt like I was dying. About a month ago, one of the most powerful warlords in Africa had successfully been taken down, and about 1,300 defeated soldiers had fled to the tower. It was pretty crazy, but stuff like that happened relatively often. Nevertheless, we still had our hands full splitting up the new entrance. Welcome. I've been waiting for you. When we got to the Great Library, the heretic questioner greeted us with a smile. His appearance was as cute as an angel's, but when one thought about the fact that he'd interrogated 33 of the soldiers during the separation process with the same smile, the level of cuteness dropped significantly. I heard that you intend to open the 31st floor.
Yeah.
We've completed the most important tasks to an extent. There is still a lot of work to be done, but I'm sure the executive level will be able to handle it. Right. Everyone has to play their part. I nodded my head. The role of the top-ranked hunters was to continuously attack the tower. We moved upward, planted our flags, and showed those who followed us that we still had further to go. We showed them the direction. And when they saw this direction, it gave them hope. In return, we had authority. A responsibility that we risked our lives for. Death King. What happened in the spar this morning? The Sword Saint looks like he ate a pile of...
Shh!
Asterisk T. He might have to use the bathroom. Let's wrap this meeting up as soon as possible in consideration for our elders. Oh, no. Sword Saint, it's okay to go use the bathroom. We can wait a few more minutes. It's not like the 31st floor is gonna run away. Oh. Are you constipated? That would be a bit of a problem. You guys. Crusader coughed slightly. Now that everyone's here, let's begin. Crusader then turned her head to look at Hamustra. Hamustra stood beside the table in silence, still dressed as a cafe employee. Hamustra was no longer the bookkeeper for the Great Library. Now, he was just a part-time employee of the Library Cafe Planetarium. Then call the librarian. Understood. Hamustra smiled before walking out of the library cafe. Not from the front door but the back. A place with a sign which said only employees allowed past this point. A little later. A child in fluffy pajamas followed Hamustra back into the room. You called. The child yawned loudly. Death King. Long time no see. The child was hugging a pillow in their arms, as if they had just woken up. The pillow was large and had colorful peaches on it. No matter how you looked at them, you would think they were a little kid. The lady who walks through the mirage greets you. This was the being who had taken over as the librarian on the 30th floor for Hamustra. This wasn't any ordinary constellation but was instead one of the so-called pillars. I bowed slightly.
Yeah.
Long time no see, milady. There would be a chance to talk about that constellation later. For now, the important fact was that the lady who walks through the mirage was in charge of the Great Library and the apocalypses. It was also a fact that she would act as a guide and helper as we attacked the tower.
The
lady looked around the table with a drowsy expression. All of the top rankers are gathered here. Do you plan to start today? That's right. It was the Black Dragon Master who answered on our behalf. You told us 2 months ago that the next stage would be opened whenever we wanted. We've finished arranging everything, so we'd like to start today. You're pretty fast. The lady rubbed her eyes with her little hands. I'm only saying this in case you misunderstood something. There is no time limit when attacking the tower. It doesn't matter if you take 600 days or 1,200 years. It's fine even if you don't clear it. Are you really sure you want to open the 31st floor today? Right. Sorry, little black. But I wasn't speaking to you. The lady interrupted the Black Dragon Master. This is something that can only be decided by the number 1. That's the rule. It's the same in any tower. You are currently ranked 3rd, so you have no right to make the decision. The Black Dragon Master shut her mouth. I'm sorry. You must think I'm being too stuck up, right? Unfortunately, rules are rules, especially in the tower. Everything depends on the person in the number 1 spot. In truth, you're pretty lucky. In the past. Lady. Hamustra spoke up quietly from the side. I don't want to point it out, but you're talking too much. Sorry. I've been sleepy ever since I came here. Anyway, Swordy. Are you sure you want to unlock the 31st floor? The lady was looking at the number 1 hunter in the tower. The Sword Saint. The Sword Saint slowly looked around. Every hunter who met the old man's gaze nodded in turn. When the Crusader, to whom his eyes turned last, also nodded, the Sword Saint finally opened his mouth. I'd like to unlock it. Understood. The lady spread her arms. The pillow she was holding fell to the floor. I, the lady who walks through the mirage, as the temporary guide of this tower, acknowledge your journey to heaven. Suddenly, a voice rang out, announcing to everyone, today, the next stage has been unlocked. It was the tower's voice. Since everyone is here, I'll just skip the formalities. The lady waved her hand. Then, a list appeared in front of our eyes. +1. Pure race. 2. Demon race. 3. Snail race. 4. Angel race. 5. Ancient race. Plus. No matter how much I scrolled, the list didn't seem to have an end. Tens and hundreds of names followed one after the other. It's finally here. I tried my best to maintain my composure as my heart pounded in my chest. However, my companions seemed to be more curious than excited. They all looked at the list with furrowed eyebrows. In this situation, the first person to ask a question was, naturally, the heretic questioner. What is this? Good question. The lady laughed. Maybe she was happy to answer our question. Try tapping on them. You'll find out. When he heard the lady's words, the heretic question tapped on the pure race. Pot. Immediately after, a hologram appeared in our minds. Plus. Pure race. Extinction grade F, no danger. Proverb, we decide the world. Description, a race with average abilities. Depending on the world, the pure could either be the slaves of other races or reign as the masters of that world. We are the representatives of intelligent beings. The pure claim to be the purest beings, in other words, pure human beings. According to them, average is normal, and they set it as their standard. Talents, rapid attitude shift, legacy of records, square enthusiast. Evolutions, none. Aliases, human, Hume, Homo sapiens, etc. Plus. An image floated beside the information. No matter how we looked at it, the being shown was exactly like us. My heart began to pound even faster. If I remember correctly, the stage that we were entering was. It's a race war. Race war. Each of you will have to pick a race. That race will worship you as their god and develop their civilizations according to your wishes and orders. Choose one race from hundreds. In the past, the Flame Emperor, who was number 1 in the rankings, chose the fairy race. He chose a race that was often called elf. And he manipulated those fairies just like everything else. The process was so horrific that I'd rather not mention it. However, what I could say was that I'd never thought elves could become such a violent and brutal race. For the god of fire. While shouting these words, elves charged forward, slaughtering other races to their heart's content. This was an example of the kind of disaster that could occur when the number 1 hunter was mentally unstable. The heretic questioner tilted his head to the side. What do you mean by develop their civilization? Exactly that. Develop their civilization in any way you desire. You can create a civilization of warlike bandits, or you can create a civilization of scholars who worship knowledge. It's all up to you. Ah, right. Would it be easier to understand if I said it this way? The lady sighed softly before bending and picking up her pillow. This time, you all. Then, with the peach pillow in her hands, the lady smiled. We'll experience what it's like to be a constellation. A buzz rippled through the room. In the meantime, my eyes remained glued to the list, trying to decide which race would be the best choice. Dragon sub-race. These guys all looked fierce and powerful like dragons, but were they actually closer to wyverns? The fairies. I might have chosen them before my return. but now, the thought of using the fairies that the Flame Emperor once used inflicted deep wounds on my tender heart. Crazy. Bei Huryong clicked his tongue. Just pick the plain pure race. You are a pure too. As a member of the race, you will know how to raise it best. No. It was obvious which race I had to choose. Plus. 103, Dakibi race. Plus. I silently touched the name of that race. Plus. Dakibi race. Extinction grade A, very dangerous. Aliases, goblin, etc. Plus. Goblin. It felt like an electric current went through my body as I looked at this two-syllable word. How could I express what this current felt like? Love? Destiny? No. I'm a regressor who returned 11 years in the past. So this. I have to get it. I took a card out of my pocket. It was a trump card that I had cherished for a very long time. A secret that no one could ever imagine. The time has come. On this card, which had a color that was infinitely similar to poop, intricate letters were inlaid. Plus. Goblin High Society. Rank F. Effects, the King Goblin was lost in thought. The level of culture for us goblins is too low. All languages end in kerk, kirk. I cannot show my dignity with this. Then, the King Goblin's genius mind flashed. That's right. From now on, I will speak Gork and not Kirk. Gork. It's a pronunciation that perfectly fits the precious king. However, the fights within the tribe become worse. This is a skill copied from the great King Goblin monster. Plus. Hey. Hey. Wait a minute. I could practically feel the expression of the ghost behind me change. You wouldn't, would you? Gongja. Even if you are one of the worst bastards in the world, you're not that bad. Right? My expression was solemn. Goblin. I declared in a steady tone. I choose Goblin. Bei Huryong fell silent for a moment. Then he exploded. Hey! You crazy bastard! Now. It was time to soar.